Welcome to the Hard Lessons podcast. I'm your host, Charlie, founder of an Oakville-based construction company. Each week, we dive into the world of business, personal development, and the entrepreneurial journey. We'll be talking with successful business owners who've been in the trenches and learned those hard lessons. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take business to the next level, you're in the right place. Join us as we turn hard lessons into stepping stones for success. All right, welcome back to the Hard Lesson podcast. Today we're having the kid contractor on, Caleb Bowman, after we finally got our stuff together, figuring out audio-less podcasts are not ideal. So thanks for getting our stuff figured out there. Caleb, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, and more so, thank you for dealing with that as probably my first and last time on your show with the 20-minute debacle there of audio issues on this beloved podcast board I have that I cannot seem to figure out. It's got to be something I'm doing wrong with trying to sync Bluetooth, so forgive me, but thank you, sir, for your grace and generosity of having me on.
It must be your first time with podcasts, eh?
I remember my first time. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. So, yeah, I can get on the mic and talk and ramble and rant and all that. That's no problem. But if you need me to push buttons and do something actual, physically technical in this thing, it's over, as you witnessed.
I'm just as bad. My our media guy hates me just as much. So we appreciate their patience. Now let's start this off. If you don't mind filling in the listeners who you are, where you come from. You guys have built a super impressive hardscape business, number one, but number two, with the education side of things, of bringing everyone else up who's around you, educating throughout the industry, growing your social brand. The podcast is one thing that you guys are awesome with. I tune in regularly. Always learning stuff from that aspect as well. So fill us in. What am I missing? Where do you guys come from? And we'll go from there.
Hey, we are a small landscape design build company based southeast of Columbus, Ohio, and we focus on landscape design and then following subsequently that the installation work. We have a small little portion of the company that does stormwater and environmental work, which is a fancy way to say we fix parking lot catch basin drains and dig out some dirty riprap and stuff in retention ponds and things like that. So small portion of the company, but it is a portion of it to an extent. Brittany and I, this year have been self-performing that a good bit ourselves. Her and I just doing random jobs in and out. So her and I are going to replace a 10-inch, a sinkhole that's formed over a 10-inch piece of storm drain pipe in eastern Ohio. So her and I are going to go do that tomorrow, but otherwise we run and manage a landscape design build company of 4 full-time guys. We're just a little north of 1 million in revenue, probably 1.3. We're really gunning at 1.3 this year. We had kind of a crappy spring. Otherwise, I think we could have hit 1.5 this year, which would have been nuts with 4 people. Like, that would really be amazing. So we're proud of that. That took us a long time to get to where we can do that kind of revenue with that few people. But we put a tremendous emphasis on tools and equipment. And we have a lot of equipment and a lot of tools, and that's obviously the force multiplier there. And so that's a huge guiding mantra of ours at the moment, and as it will continue to be. And utilizing technology as much as we can. We got a long ways to go still, and we have plenty of problems, and we're far from perfect. But we're really just carrying forward as best we can. So that's us. I've been in contracting for 24 or 5 years now. I don't even know. I started my first company right during high school, as soon as I could drive, when I was 16, and ran that for just a fuzz over 10 years. And that company went broke. It did probably decent for the first 10 years. I never really know, because I never really did good financials. Did nice work, did good work, had good clients. Just ran a bad company, crashed that thing completely in 2008. My wife and I started dating, started a new company, got married then. And that was pushing 14 years ago now. And we really, I would like to say, really didn't have our crap together until about 5 years ago, which is kind of embarrassing for all that time in business, to where I'm like, yeah, the last 5 years, we've kind of actually had our act together somewhat. So that's us in a nutshell.
So why is that? What changed with the last 5 years? There had to be a few things that finally opened your guys' eyes. Like, would you be able to highlight a few of the major ones?
So we started somewhat getting out of our own way. That was a big thing. So we started to really get heavy into mechanizing everything as much as we can. started to change our mindset on things and business. I feel like we've always been good about delegating to an extent and making, I've been very good about staying out of the field pretty much my whole career. I've always had that as a strength. I haven't felt that I have to micromanage and deal with that stuff in the field. And I've had a great handful of employees over the years that have been awesome and who I can trust and, count on to carry out work in the field. But that's also backfired at times, and that's just what's going to happen. That's okay. But that's been a big key is, great people, good people. We've had substandard and subpar people, and they kind of weed themselves out eventually. But 5 years ago, I think Brittany and I just really started to get into the right mindset of business and really deciding to be business people more than anything. And even in the last 2 years, we've just every year I feel like, man, 3 years ago, I didn't know anything. And I just keep looking back. It's like, gosh, didn't know anything. How do we even get by or do anything? And this year's no exception. We've had a great year financially, and production wise, but we've really just started to get out of our own way again in different ways and like changing our mindset. And that's been my big mantra and push is like your own personal development is the thing that holds you back from doing anything really, whatever you want. So, one of our big pushes this year has been focusing on design clients and clients that see value in paying for landscaping design. And then from there, that snowballs into most likely they're going to have you do the work. And that's been a tremendous change for us. Charlie, I could go forever on little tweaks and changes we've made over the last 2 years that I feel like have been really paramount to the type of work we're so far being very consistent with doing, but we can spare that to dig into with another question.
Right on. Now you mentioned design clients, and like obviously that's huge. If they're already willing to pay for the design up front or pay for the consultation, they're qualifying themselves right away. But where do you draw the line or recommend to the guys just starting out of like not blocking too much of those leads? Like maybe they don't have the portfolio yet, or they're not built up enough, and they can't afford to turn down the people who are going to say no to that initial consultation or that initial design. But in return, they get a lot of I guess, can kickers or guys who aren't as serious in that mix of leads. Like, where do you guys draw the line of, we want to bill for our time, but at the same time, not block out, all of our business?
This is where the mindset thing comes into play and personal development. And someone you and I both know, Mark Bradley, who, among many other people I consider peers and mentors and friends and colleagues and professors or whatever you want to, just somebody you really need to pay attention to. But, he was saying the other day, like, first you need to be proficient and understand the work, and then you work. If I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but you've got to understand the work, and then you work on, and maybe in tandem with this, you work at the same time, but then you start working on, mindset and personal development. And I think really you're working on personal development the whole time. But I think what it is you start to, and again, this is in 2024. The economy has changed. Things are not like they were for the last 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years, 15 years. It's a tighter economy, but there's still clients out there with money to spend. And barring like economic depression, there will still always be clients that have inherited money, are still having a great job, have sold a property. There are still people with money to spend, again, barring an economic collapse. So I think it starts out with turning down the work that you don't want to do for starters. And that allows you to focus on the stuff that you really want to do. And that takes, and again, on the personal development and things, that takes bravery. And that sounds kind of crazy, but sometimes you've got to be brave to say no. And trust that chances are something's going to come in. And in worst case scenario, something crappy comes in, you got nothing to do, then you go do it. But, and again, that's a guy with 25 years under his belt and 25 years of business, a book of business, of clients calling and all that. So I understand for the new guy starting out, it's really tough. But that's again where like, that's the thing. You're going to make it or you're not. And you have that mindset. You're going to make this or you're not. And so like all you're spending your time doing is learning and reading and training and all that kind of stuff. So if like every spare minute you have that you're not producing work, you're learning how to solve these problems. If you're not doing that, you're not going to quote unquote make it. Maybe that's a little harsh, but the reality is like I was all in on this for forever. I still am. I still spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to learn this craft and this trade. And anybody you talk to, that's not that we have made it, because we sure haven't, but anybody you talk to that runs, again, whatever means. We can get way off track here, so let me rein this in, Charlie. The main thing I think to come back to is like you start to say no to work that you don't want to do. And something I was saying a few years ago to myself and our listeners was like, I need to focus on the estimates and the quotes that I'm excited to stay up late to do, or excited to go visit, or excited to get up early to produce, or, write the quote up. And for us, that was hardscape work and design build work, and especially French drain work. I'm always excited to do French drain quotes. I don't know why, but I'm always excited to do that. Charlie, one thing real quick, is that dinging of my text messages coming through to your ears?
I don't hear them now. You're good. Fantastic.
Okay, just making sure. And so that's what you focus on. And then the stuff that that you're back burnering, those estimates, you're like, oh, I'll quote Grandma Herfenerbler tomorrow, or when it rains this weekend. Those are the jobs you need to start saying no to, right? And focusing on the ones you're excited to write up. And so that way, what you get, you'll be known for what you do more of. And so if you keep doing these crappy one-off jobs like cleaning gutters and a leaf cleanup that you don't freaking want to do, or whatever, but like, hey, Mrs. Herfenerbler called and she wants a little garden wall built around her corner of her house. Awesome. I need to focus on that quote and selling that job over this crappy leaf cleanup I don't want to do. And I think that's it. You just start to slowly call out or cut out the stuff you don't want to do, and just always be moving towards the work you want to do. And that takes some bravery, because it's easy to run from a fear mindset, let's say, and a scarcity mindset. I can't believe I'm saying this hippie stuff, but I believe it. But it's easy to be like, well, if I don't quote that job and we don't get this other job, then we got nothing to do. And it's like, no, if you spend your energy and your passion on the stuff you want to do, that work will continue to come in, because you're going to be getting known for that type of work. And like, we don't get calls to clean gutters anymore. We don't get calls to do leaf cleanups anymore. We don't get calls to do, it's funny. We don't get calls for like all these like little jobs I used to do years ago, because we've worked our way out of that network, if you will, and that being known for that kind of stuff.
Like just by saying no, right?
And it just starts by saying no. Yeah, we just start. Oh, you can't get referred for what people don't know you do. And so, so it's like, yeah, if the whole neighborhood knows you do leaf cleanups, they're going to refer you for leaf cleanups. If the whole neighborhood's starting to realize, like, hey, he did that front retaining wall out there, or he did that snow and ice work, or whatever it is. So saying no to the stuff you don't want to do is a great start to be working more towards what you want.
Right on. And I love how you touched on the personal development of like how bad you actually want it. If you're putting every cent or every second of your time into getting better and learning and the next step, if you really want it bad enough, you'll figure it out. Even if it is saying no and you're short on work, it's I love when people are saying like, oh, the recruiting's hard, there's no one's looking for a job, or there's no leads. It's just like, no, you're shit at recruiting, or you're shit at getting leads. It's like you just haven't figured that out yet. And I know, Alex Hormozi talks about it as like levels, and it's like a video game. You want to achieve these, like you keep getting better and beating that boss, and whether it's used now or used later on, you use that lesson with whatever you're doing. So I am curious though, circling back to especially this season with how the economy's been, like marketing, what have you guys done? What's worked, what hasn't, and how far do you go with, I don't know, whether it's Google Ads, Facebook, or referral programs? I'm curious what you guys do.
Yeah, and if I can run back one quick thing, and this is something I've written on the whiteboard in our kitchen at the office here, and on the whiteboard, the big idea board, is this is something that's been running through my head, and part of this is germinated from something Mark Bradley said. But it's like, what problem do you have, and what would it take to not have that problem anymore? So again, yeah, we're having a hard time getting good employees. Okay, that's the problem. What's the inverse of that? Like, how do we make that not a problem? And that's what we focus on. Or like, hey, our mobilization in our company sucks. And so like, what would good mobilization look like? What do we need to do to get there? So like, what is the problem? And then what's the opposite of that? And how do we fix that? And like, it's such a simple thing. I'm kind of embarrassed to like, it's so rudimentary of like, I think of like a problem or whatever we've got going right now. It's like, what would it take to fix this problem? Like, pick the problem here at the company. We've got plenty. And it's like, what's the opposite of this? Like, what would, so I'm running it through everything. And it's going to be a team meeting we're going to be having next week with our guys. Like, hey, what's a problem we have right now that you deal with and you curse me for all the time, whatever it is? How do we fix this? And so that's that. So then the question being, go ahead.
The solution usually is the easiest part. It's the hard part is just identifying and getting guys to slow down and be like, hey, let's think for a second. Let's open our eyes. Let's identify this. So now that we're all aware of it, usually solves in a shorter amount of time than you actually think. I think our minds are what block us from going and attacking the problem. It's like, holy shit, I've got this big thing I've got to deal with. But usually between you and the team, it's not that big of a deal.
That is the hard part is the problem between your own ears, us owners, right? Of like, most of the time we are not even most of the time, we always are. If we have a hard time finding good people, what is the problem? Well, there is something about me or this company that's not attractive to people. What is that? And how do we fix that? And is it, we're not doing fancy enough jobs. We're not doing just, what is it? Do we not look like we have our crap together? Do we not pay enough? Do we not offer good enough benefits? What is the problem? You start to really look deep and dig into that and maybe even ask some outside perspective on that. And if you can unscrew that thing out of your head that's causing the problem, which is, Charlie, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying, figuratively us, all of us, what is that problem? What?
Well, we've got plenty.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we do too. I mean, everybody does. And so anybody who thinks got it figured out, one, they don't. They've got plenty of their own problems. And, but the thing is, like, it doesn't matter. We all have our own and we got to fix our own. And by us fixing our own, it's going to make everybody else's jobs and lives and companies better too. So, yeah, that's where the personal development comes down. As soon as you realize you're the problem and it's your leadership that sucks, and this is something, it's a hard pill to swallow because I'm talking to myself, but like, hey, I'm really waffling on hiring a landscape designer / salesperson / operations manager. I got a unicorn of a person that can do all this, and I'm scared of the payroll commitment. And I've got to figure out, how am I going to be like brave and make that make sense to allow me to do this move that will allow me to take the company where I think we can take it. And so that's a problem with my leadership and in my head I've got to overcome. And then maybe too, if we look at it rationally, maybe it doesn't make sense to do. And I talked to some peers about it. Maybe it doesn't make sense to do. Maybe we got to change some other things of how I manage my time and stuff like that. So, but ultimately still, it all comes down to the leader. And all the problems, no matter what they are your problem to be solved. And it's all hinging on you. And it can be overcome and fixed if you just look at it rationally, which is tough because not sometimes, emotion gets the best of us a lot of times. So anyways.
Point, taking emotion out of the decision. The numbers don't lie. And shit, what else did he talk about? It's so easy to, like, my next point was like how easy it is for us to take responsibility for all the good stuff that happens, but it's tough looking in the mirror and being like, yeah, I did that. Like when it's not ideal and not the best thing, right? And I think if we're able to just take ownership for everything, and we can like get all the bullshit out of the way and just get right to the facts, and then just keep moving, opposed to tripping over.
I think of good employees I've had over the years that left or moved on to other companies that I probably could have kept another year or two at least if I would have realized what they really wanted out of our company. I probably could have kept them a couple more years or more if I'd have realized what they were really looking for, which was more growth. And if I would have realized to turn them loose even more than I have and give them more responsibility they wanted, and I was too chicken to give them, which comes with pay, but that's a fear leadership mindset. Now the money and all that, the finances have to make sense, of course. But like again, that's the personal development, dude. It's just everything is on the owners and the leaders, and you've got to be just working on yourself. You've got to constantly be working on being the best version of yourself that you possibly can be if you expect anybody of any reasonable caliber to work for you. You think of people you would go work for. You know what I mean? I think about it a lot. Like, who would I go work for if I were seeking employment, from outside companies? Like, who would I go work for? Would I go work for like Bob's Lawn Care down the road, or am I going to work with Premierscapes or whoever, right? That has a great owner and their culture is good and they don't hire a bunch of knuckleheads and they do really nice work and they've got good machines. Like that's who I'm going to be looking at, right? And so I've always got to be thinking out of myself of, when it comes to any of that stuff, right? Or a client. Like if I were a client, what am I that was going to spend, $100,000? What kind of client do they look like? What is important to them in a company? And that kind of stuff. So I've just always got to be working on that, right? And there's so much to cover there, Charlie. Holy cow.
I think you get what you tolerate, whether it's with guys or with employees or just your image as well. Like, I think that's what it all comes back to, the image of not only the company, but you personally as the owner of like, how can you be respected? How can you be your persona? What do you tolerate? Right. And as soon as something slides, that's the new standard. And we've learned that the hard way dealing with guys all season. But once they start getting on the same page, it's contagious and can be contagious both ways. I'm curious how you guys deal with, I guess, the culture, having everyone continuously in that mindset of pushing the envelope, raising the bar, always getting better, not being scared to try new things, whether it's new ways of doing things on site or new ways of whether it's loading the truck, like all this small stuff can add up negatively or positively. Like, how do you guys instill that in them?
Yeah, you don't just get what you tolerate. You get more of it. It's even worse. You get more of what you tolerate, right? If you tolerate someone being late, well, they're going to be late the next day or a couple times the next week or whatever. So it's not just a one-time thing if you tolerate it. You get it multiple times and potentially becomes a cancerous culture, right? And so that's something we have been working on. And I say I have been working on because I've let some things seep into our company culture over the years now, over forever, that don't align with our current goals. And it's wild, but it's stuff like even the thought of working a Saturday is so objectionable to my team right now that like it's borderline mutiny when I even mention, whisper the thought of working a Saturday. I mean, everybody nearly threatens to quit. And it's like, I have done this to myself because I never kept that as a possibility of like, hey, there's going to be a Saturday or two we're going to have to work. And so like, just to be completely frank, like that is a huge problem. And as our company, and we've worked 2 Saturdays this year, it's the first time in like 5 years, and everybody about lost their marbles on me because of it. And so to be completely open about that, that's something as we get more and more, and the reason this is an issue or more important is because I didn't used to pay attention to our productivity and our production and how much we actually would get done in a week. So I used to not care. This is embarrassing to say, but years ago, I used to not care if the guys would clock 30 hours in a week because it rained a bunch. But now, and since we, pay attention to how many productive hours we put in a week and how much that affects our overhead recovery and how much that affects ultimately what we make a year, that if it's not like, and I'd be like, yeah, everybody had 30 hours this week. I guess that's just what it is. We're not working Saturday. And it would suck, but I wouldn't push for it. And like, I didn't do that for years and years and years. And that just became the cultural normal, right? Instead of saying like, guys, which is what our culture is turning around to. And it's a slow grind back uphill here, but it's like, hey, whatever we do, we have to during peak season, March to December, we have to clock 40 hours of production. We have to clock 40 hours.
Production?
I say production, but clocked time, in which ideally we try to make sure that it's 40 hours. Or I'm sorry, we try to make sure that it's, efficient as possible, right? And some folks are even like, oh, you only work 40 hours a week. Well, yeah, that's a thing too. Like we were kind of vacation Auman for a while. But what we're doing to combat that a little bit is, or to combat that period is, incentive structures to help guys understand that like, you're not just working more to pay for my snowmobile trip in Montana every year. You're working more, and the more we work and the more we produce, the better your bonus is every year. And the chances are better that we're going to be able to pay more next year. And so we're slowly building this culture back up of like, this is the benefit of like really going hard and making sure now if we get 2 days of rain, we got to put in 3 12s or something. We got to get 12 hours. We got to get 40 hours of work in a week, or as darn close to it as we possibly can. And I let that slide for years. And now we're starting to turn that around in the last couple years, maybe 3, but really pushing it harder this year. And that is tough. And when we talk to guys starting out, I love one of the things I say to guys like that are starting out or young in their company, like you have such an awesome opportunity to really begin to set the culture of your company and what that culture looks and feels like. Now, it'll be ever changing and ever morphing. And one of the things that makes it tough too, this is the curse of, one of my employees has been with me for the whole time, 25 years. And a couple other guys have been with me for 15 years and each. And the problem with that is the old company they associate us as with some of the stuff is not the company we are now. And so that's one of the detractors of having long-term employees is if you as a leader, and again, this is all my fault, but if you as a leader are not constantly molding culture and what is the new norm for the company and where we're going and casting vision, and you let things stagnate for a while, you get into this. Now, the other end of like what's awesome about long-term employees to combat, the cultural issues, if you screw that up as a leader, like I have to an extent, is like you've got great loyal guys that show up. You're not worried that they're coming back next year. You're not worried about them showing up Monday. You're not worried about them having your company credit card in their pocket all year long. You're not worried about them taking trucks home. You're not worried about their responses and reactions with clientele. Like there's amazing stuff to be said for long-term employees, but they have to grow and evolve with the company as you grow and evolve as a leader and the vision caster for the company. So that's the one thing I will tell to guys starting out, like make sure your guys always understand that, like, again, if we're a forward-thinking, growth-minded company, like this thing is, the quality is always paramount, right? And safety is always paramount. But as we grow and evolve, there's going to be changes in the company, and we've all got to morph together and grow together. And because if we can't and don't, somebody's got to get off the bus. And so that's been like a really challenging thing over the last couple of years of some stuff we've had to change and really uproot some deep rooted habits that aren't the guy's fault. I let it happen. And so we're working through that, and we've got great guys. I mean, my gosh, they're awesome dudes. I don't worry about them stealing or any, that's just not a concern, right? I know they're showing up. I know they're going to do awesome work. I know they're going to take awesome care of our clients. Our clients always rave about how professional they are and great. Like that's wonderful. But as a leader, I've got to constantly be reiterating like how we're always morphing as a company. And that's something we're working on right now.